Hi, welcome back to my channel. Richard Tang, CEO of Zen Internet. And 30 years ago, almost to the day, in the summer of 1995, I was living in Clevedon, south of Bristol, working as a software contractor for Oxford Instruments in Yatton. And one day, I had a chat with my brother Dan in the pub. I asked him if he thought the internet would take off, and he said yes.
So I took the first ferry out of there and ended up in a monastery.
No way. That is the weirdest story I've heard all year. That was a lucky escape. Anyway, I was going to ask you, heard a couple of guys talking about the internet, and I just wondered, like, have you used that?
Yeah, we've got that at university.
Oh, right. And, like, the internet, do you think it'll take off?
Yeah, I reckon it'll really take off, especially this email thing.
Oh, right. So, I've been thinking it might make a good business, so do you fancy getting together, setting up an internet service provider business? You know, just give it a go, see if it'll work. Don't matter if it doesn't.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Cool. Let's give it a go.
Let's do it.
Fantastic. And you see, that's where it started. The idea was planted. I had about £5,000 in the bank, and that was enough to buy a bit of equipment and rent a small office in Rochdale. So that was 30 years ago, and as a result of that, changed my entire life, grew Zen to the company it is today, and our growth, apart from acquiring a tiny little dial-up ISP in the 90s, has been completely organic up until now. Now, before we go on to the whole Fibrehop acquisition, there's another strand to this story of chatting in the pub. So when I was writing software in Yatton, there was a 14-year-old boy roller skating around that site. and also, he also worked a little bit later in the pub where we had the chat, which was the Bridge Inn just outside of Yatton. And that little boy, who's now not so little, but who's now grown up, is Paul Anslow. Paul, a very warm welcome to Zen, isn't it?
Thank you for having me.
Isn't it interesting how our lives intertwine?
Learning that yesterday morning was just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So yeah, you're right. It's very, very interesting.
Because of course you were working in Yatton as a teenager.
Yeah.
You set up Triangle Networks in Clevedon, where I used to live. That was 2004. You were in your early 20s. So tell me a bit about that journey of setting up a company. Actually, as at quite a young age, 21 years later, still going strong.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably do look back and think, even setting the company up, I probably still felt a bit like that teenager roller skating around. The unexpected twists and turns that you have and setting any business up. That was certainly the thing at the time. But yeah, so I mean, a bit of an explanation. I started off at BT at university, and in fact got to the point really where I was struggling to finish my degree because I was so busy working at BT and learning what would later become my career, left pretty promptly in 2003 to get back to Clevedon actually, or back to nearby, nearer to Yatton where I went to school. So got back to Clevedon and got myself a little flat, and the rest is history. But interesting times really.
And in terms of Triangle, the business idea and what you actually do at Triangle, I guess a potted history of the last 21 years to get to here. And I think particularly then in 2021, your decision to start a consumer ISP, Fibrehop.
Yeah, no problem. So back in 2004, one thing was really clear is that I was going to struggle to work for anyone. I sort of probably had that entrepreneurial spirit. I think you know what I'm talking about there. I sort of felt like I really wanted to do something for myself. My parents' company was working for a company that did a lot of low-cost call routing, those kind of things. But we felt that we wanted to get into the world of billing, services, telephony. And so eventually I managed to convince them to use some of the office space and a member of their team, which they invested in. And we built Triangle pretty much from there with myself and half of one person's day to make some telephone calls and that was it. I mean, the broadband world came about because in about 2012, I think, we did a lot of voice over IP, and we felt that the analog market was shifting quite significantly. We really wanted to get quality into the proposition, so we needed to make sure that we could control the connectivity that we were providing, rather than just buy it from another provider. And that was one of the biggest problems with voice over IP was the quality. So we became an ISP to do that, working with some other folks. But yeah, I remember back in 2004 when we set the business up, where we were coming out of the back of working at BT when no one really even heard of broadband, and then we're sort of sat here now. Yeah. So quite a strange sort of evolution, I suppose. But yes, we started off providing internet for that reason, and then we probably got a little bit bored, as entrepreneurs tend to, or I did at least. And then we launched City Fibre in 2016 to do the metro network stuff in Bristol. That was really, really successful. We collaborated a lot with a lot of the IT providers and telecoms providers for the city. So our first experience of bringing people together that may have sort of seen themselves as competitors before that, and worked a lot with them and got through that part of the journey. But
was that all B2B?
Yeah, all B2B. Yeah,
right.
all B2B, and all Ethernet in the city centre. So a bit exciting time, and I suppose we probably got a bit of an appetite at that stage for doing something a bit disruptive. I mean, it's in my nature anyway to do something a bit disruptive, and I wanted to kind of have a little pop at pushing something a bit different. And again, I think we thought that quality was a real problem. We were looking at small businesses, who I am very much a champion of, not really getting the connectivity that they should, and there being a big sort of gap between the larger businesses and those smaller businesses in what they could do digitally. So it sort of felt like the big companies could do all sorts of really cool stuff, and then the smaller companies would really struggle to even do something simple like a couple of voice over IP phones, or they wanted to use a web platform of some description, a SaaS platform for some description. So yeah, we sort of championed that, and I sort of feel like we've become the guys that try to disrupt and do something different, and we can, because of being a smaller company and being agile. Bit more of an issue, I suppose, when you get into the world of consumer broadband.
That was 2021 then? You'd not done consumer before that?
No. So I remember having a really good, it was 2020 when we had a really good January. I think the voucher scheme was going on at the time. We'd done some really, really good events, and we'd really gotten stuck into some good marketing. And I remember in February, I was coming back from a snowboarding trip with my family, and our friends had complained of a really bad cold that they'd had in bed, and they'd left about 2 weeks, a week before us or something like that. And I remember them talking about this really horrible cold that they got, and then people talked about, I think in Italy, I think the first case of the coronavirus were coming to light. So we were thinking that this could be a risk, but I think it's probably okay. And very optimistically, we thought, this will be fine. We'll carry on doing what we've done and all this sort of stuff. But I think probably later in 2020, we realised that if the offices are closed, we don't have any customers at all. The customers that we have are now at home, and we need to go and find them and provide them with a good service. I think we thought we could apply the same logic that we'd provide to the businesses, the same sort of the way that we support the customer, and the transparency that we like to provide. That was a big part of it. What if we competed with the main providers in the country, big corporate names? We became the Rebel Alliance, which we loved. With
bit of a Star Wars fan then.
Well, not so much. I do. I do like it, but I'm sort of more of a fan of winding someone up, actually. I think, and so we were thinking about the front page of the website being kind of Yoda ears and the whole bit, but. Then I was reminded of how damaging that could be to us as a business if a larger company got the wrong end of the stick and didn't take it as so much of a joke. So we just had this sinking feeling that the business world was gonna really, really struggle, as we know it did, and we thought we wouldn't have a lot of customers. So we thought, well, let's provide a product. And sometime before that, I'd come up with the name Fibrehop, for a fibre to wireless proposition, rural fibre to wireless proposition. So again, being optimistic, I thought, well, it'd be fine. We can just put a website together, no time at all, and we'll just, we'll start selling broadband until that obviously became more complicated, and it sort of grew legs. But yeah, exciting times.
And you got to a point, obviously, fairly recently where you thought, you know what, being a consumer ISP isn't the route for Triangle.
Yeah.
Let's look at selling the base.
Yeah.
And be interested to sort of hear about the thought process of something that you'd built up, and then thinking, you know what, I should let this go and I guess focus back on the B2B space. And obviously that's when we started.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Discussion. Exactly
the way it went. It was a little bit earlier than that. Probably about 18 months ago, maybe almost 2 years ago. We realised that we wanted to provide a really good quality of service, but to do that at scale, and to keep the quality is a lot harder, I think, than people think it would be. The most obvious, I suppose, if you use a car analogy, if someone's going into a showroom for a cheap car, they can just go and buy a cheap car from a place they know what it is. But with broadband, you'll end up with a bunch of customers of lots of different backgrounds and interests and buying behaviours and all that kind of thing. And I think we just thought that if we approach things in a certain way, treated everyone as a business customer, then we would get the same results we do with the business world. But it's just not that. And I think to do things at scale, you've got to appreciate, all the different types of behaviours that you get, and it's hard to build a niche when it's not at scale. So it's really, really hard. I know you guys have very strong, niche product for quality, or quality focus. That's always been the case, of course. And I think we struggled to get that. So 18 months ago, we said, look, let's stop growing it. We stopped marketing. We stopped doing that. But we wanted to be able to still provide a really good service to our customers. We were kind of mid to high, excellent scores and Trustpilot.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we kept that. And I feel that if we'd have gone for a more mass market appeal, I think we'd have eroded that. And as we've talked about a couple of times, probably my greatest driver of all is based on what kind of legacy is the wrong word, but certainly what impact we make on businesses. And for me, my focus is on small businesses having a chance to kind of and weight in the economy, which I think is real, has always been a driver of mine. I think that small independent businesses have a lot to offer, and people get a lot from them, particularly in the retail sector. A lot of independent shops are just fantastic, but we just couldn't do that at scale, and that was tricky. But at the end of the day, we made a decision. We didn't have to sell, which was great. We could wait for the right partner.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the way we saw it. We joked about Zen before we even knew that Zen would be interested. We joked about the fact that wouldn't it be lovely if Zen were the company that bought it, because there were a huge amount of similarities in the business. And I think when that opportunity arose, we just felt like we had the right path. It was almost so very similar to our conversation yesterday morning about Clevedon.
Yeah,
it sort of felt like there's no such thing as coincidences. I don't think. I think too many of them.
It was.
Yeah,
fate.
I think it was a bit of fate. And it just felt right. And we went in first meeting the guys. Dave Barber was the first guy we met, of course. In fact, I was chatting to your guys yesterday about that because Dave was introduced to me by a kind of mutual friend. In fact, I'd not met him before. And we bumped into each other in the hallway, putting our suitcase. We were at an event, the Fibre Summit, UK Fibre Summit, and we bumped each other in the hallway. And I joked that I had been waiting here for an hour and a half for you, which obviously I hadn't. But again, a bit of fate. It was a fortuitous moment where I was able to speak to Dave and kind of knock the idea around. And we got to a point where it just felt like the right thing to do. And then anyone I've spoken to since has said, I get it, I really get it, and get why we waited and why we weren't in a rush, that we were quite happy to just, hold on to the business for as long as it took to get the right partner, get the right acquisition going. So, and here we are.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Absolutely. And I guess that over the coming weeks, we'll be welcoming the Fibrehop base to Zen. So really looking forward to that. I guess then you and your team will be able to focus 100% back on the B2B world. You'll have a bit of extra money to do that with as well. So looking forward to Triangle, the Triangle in the business. What does that look like?
Well, we'll be disrupting something.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of stuff in the kind of Wi-Fi sector before. We've done a lot of kind of like self-build of some really cool platforms, some things that we think are specifically useful for the SME business market, naturally, given what we've talked about. I think we'll be back out there. We've got a new brand, Switch Off Social, which is about just trying to help support small businesses in understanding what's going on. And the reason we've chosen to use a separate brand for that is because we want to make sure that whoever they buy from, they're doing something about it. And one of those other messages is, if you're a small business, just align with someone you trust. That trust is like super important for businesses to get the right advice. It's really important that people get, that kind of trusted friend to give them advice. And in a world where it's going to otherwise be very, very complicated, with a lot of options and many, many kind of pitfalls amongst all that. So we'll be doing a lot of that, a lot of roadshowy things. We'll be bringing pizza vans around and all those kind of things. One of them maybe we'll park in the Zen car park and do a general thing. But so we're looking forward to doing that. I think the letting go of the residential customer base is a slightly painful process, given we've got a lot of people we know, and we know them really well. There's some amazing people, particularly the guys in sort of Milton Keynes Broadband Action Group, who were a hell of a trigger for those early stage kind of campaigns that were needed to get things moving. So we'll be saying goodbye to some of those guys, and we will probably go and join them for a social of some description to say thanks. But we know it's the right thing. We know that we're going to be able to focus on the thing that we do best. We know the customer's going to be looked after. We don't have the tools to look after them as it grows, and regulation is more complex and everything else that comes with it. And we know, and the process is seamless, right? That sort of feels like a bit of a kind of a strange thing in that bit. But when people move from one provider to another, they need to know that they're not going to all of a sudden be cut off, or and they're going to have they're going to immediately talk to other nice people. I find that's quite a driver for me, and I think knowing that they're going to be looked after like that makes it all a lot easier. And we will probably see many of them in the business world, hopefully, and hopefully won't be too far away from them sometime soon. But yeah,
good. Well, look, Paul, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. Thanks so much for doing the acquisition deal.
No worries at all.
If you are watching and you are a Fibrehop customer, then very much looking forward to welcoming you to Zen over the coming weeks. I'd like to give you a reassurance that we are recommended by consumer organisation Which. We've just won the Utilities Brand of the Year award, again from Which. We've got a Trustpilot score of 4.5, which is excellent. We've been voted by the readership of PC Pro the UK's best broadband provider for the last 21 years. So since 2004, when Triangle was founded by Paul, we're a certified B Corp, and our purpose is to do right for people and planet. Now, we don't do any mid-contract price hikes, which is unlike most of the rest of the industry. And we also don't impose a loyalty penalty on our customers. And again, most of the rest of the industry charge existing customers who come out of contract more than they charge new customers. We don't do that, and we're really in the exception there. So, look, we're looking forward to providing a really, really good service to you and welcoming you to Zen very soon. So that is everything. Thank you again, Paul, and thank you very much for watching.